Good morning. Here's another video about slavery, because this has been on my mind lately, and something that somebody said just today, in fact, really just set me off. More about apologetics, people defending the Bible, defending slavery, and quite frankly, I'm just fucking sick of it. I am so sick of Christians in general, but I'm especially sick of Christians who actually try to defend the Bible. For many reasons, one of which is that most of you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. You sit there and talk about things in the Bible that either haven't happened, were not done in the way you think they were, or you just completely fabricate just pure bullshit because you don't like to admit that your Bible, your God, is fucked up. Well, let me tell you why it's fucked up some more. Leviticus 25, 44, and 46. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you can buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. Now, I'm going to make a point about the property thing here in a second, but listen, it says you can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. Now, I'm going to read you another version of the same passage because I found this to be, well, disturbing, but interesting. In the New American Standard, excuse me, it actually says, I can't click it here, it actually says something along the lines of, but you must not do this to your countrymen. I don't know why it's not letting me click the link. But it actually makes the distinction between, it's okay to do these things about slavery to these other people, to your neighbors basically, but don't do it to your own people. I mean, that is self-admittedly just fucked up. I mean, it's recognizing the fact that what I'm telling you to do is okay for these people but not these people, which obviously means it's not okay. If what you were doing was okay, was good, was virtuous, was moral, it wouldn't matter if you were doing it to yourself and to your own people. So obviously, this verse, these two verses, three verses, recognize the fact that what it's saying is not okay. And then the bit about the property, I want to make sure you understand how badly this was written. Anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result. But they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. Okay? So to clear any confusion from the beginning about what type, if you even want to go there, about what type of relationship the master-slave thing was, it was not servitude. These things were not set up like, I'm just going to employ you and that's how it's going to be. No, no, no. It was property. Genuine property. And I think that Exodus and Leviticus have made that very clear. You can pass them to your children and you can beat them because they're your property, and etc., etc., okay? So, very fucked up. Already. And I'm not even done yet. Exodus 21, 2 through 6. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone, but if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. Now, I went a little bit about this before, but I felt it was important to bring it up in this video again, especially if somebody else hasn't seen the other videos. And it goes on, if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. I don't even know how to say anything about that. It is disgusting. I mean, to the point that they're actually taking like a big old spike, going up to their doorpost with the nail in the ear, and ramming it through as a mark that you own that person, as a declaration on their part that they are owned by you. Ephesians 6:5. Now the reason I'm bringing these two back to back is to show that it's not, they repeat it a lot, as if they're like, we know this works, so let's keep doing it. And we don't have a problem with it, so let's keep doing it. Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. 1 Peter 2:18. Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. This goes back to being beaten, because the problem is that this mentality brings about certain behaviors, and masters of slaves really don't care, obviously, how they treat their slaves, because they're not servants. A servant is something, is a term for someone that is in your home, that works for you, that is on your pay, that is typically even in your home to stay, like as a guest, but they work. A slave is something quite different. A slave is property. I mean, the Bible isn't being aloof here. It's being very clear. Slaves are your property. Do whatever you want to them, as long as they don't die. In 1 Timothy 6:1 and 2, all who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Now, right out the gate, this is like some kind of pride and class issue, like, ooh, we can't do anything to make our people look bad, even though we're having the shit beat out of us by motherfuckers with rods who can do that because the Bible and the alleged God that wrote it says it's okay. Alright? The setup here is bullshit. Those who have believing masters, and in another translation this says Christian, it says if your master is a Christian, those who have believing masters should not show them disrespect just because they are fellow believers. Instead, they should serve them even better because their masters are dear to them as fellow believers and are devoted to the welfare of their slaves. This is just dripping with disgust. This is so hideous that it is fully recognizing these different views and these different positions that are based on an alleged holy script. And it even recognizes the fact that it recognizes human behavior. It knows. Why? Because these are fucking humans that wrote this shit, and no one wants to be a fucking slave. So they're writing this shit in order to perpetuate the idea that Christians, one, have some kind of authority just because they believe this bullshit, and that slavery is okay because God said it, and therefore, since God said it, you need to go be a slave and respect everyone else's authority over you. Now this goes back to the other verses that I did a video about respecting anyone who's in authority. There is no one in authority but by God's choosing. I'm totally paraphrasing there. But the concept is that there's no point in rebelling or fighting back or disagreeing even with anyone who is in authority, because according to the stupid fucked up piece of white trash literature called the Bible, everyone is where they're supposed to be. In other words, God God does everything right, so there's no authority that isn't given without his choosing. Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao, the Crusades even people will sit there and even other Christians will say, well, the Crusades were bad. Well, yeah, hindsight doesn't look that good, especially when you come out looking like the asshole. So of course they're going to say, well, these things are bad now, but if you believe that the authority is given by God, all of it's good. Everything bad that has ever happened was there by God's choosing. All the authority figures who put all the pain, suffering, and anguish into the world, that was by God's choosing. So we go back to slavery now, and it's kind of reinforcing that again. Obey them, respect them, because God made them your masters. Luke 12:47 and 48. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. It's just all over again. And for those of you who attempt to make the argument that there are some things in the Old Testament and some things in the New Testament, and the New Testament's better and Jesus came and fixed stuff from God's problems in the Old Testament and blah blah blah. Okay, despite the many flaws inherent in the argument to begin with, I'm not going to go there, I'll hit that with another video, but despite all that, here it is, New Testament, and it is still endorsing slavery. So you can take that New Testament as better shit and shove it right up your fucking ass. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. And the part that pisses me off about this verse in particular is that I heard that my whole life growing up. Is that that one line right there about, you know, those who've been given much will be given much responsibility and will be asked much blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, no wonder they didn't really elaborate on the verse, because the beginning of that starts with beating and slavery. Violence and human ownership is how that starts. But did we ever hear about that growing up as kids? Did you hear about that in Sunday morning church? Did you hear about that when you're in the pews listening to that fucking retard pretend that he knows what he's talking about because he's got some wild hair up his ass about what he thinks the Bible means instead of just reading it as fucking black and white? No. You don't hear about that shit, because any decent, moral person is going to hear that stuff and go, whoa, whoa, I'm supposed to love this God and he's talking about beating slaves? That doesn't seem to click. No wonder they don't fucking tell you about this shit. But this is the God you worship, Christians. I talk about theists a lot, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows this is really about Christians. This is the God you worship. If you've seen any of the other videos, man, it's like, I don't even know how you could hear all this stuff or even read it for yourself, sadly, which most of you never do, and still worship that God and be okay with it. I mean, and the problem is that you completely lose all of your fairness to yourself. You lose all of your rational thinking when it comes to the Bible. Because if I came up to you and said all of these things in modern day English and said, oh, some dude from Scandinavia said that stuff, you would immediately, any decent one of you, would immediately say, well, who the hell is that guy? I'm going to go fuck him up. That's disgusting. We need to stop that guy and make sure that he's not teaching in schools and trying to change laws and shit, because that's some fucked up, disturbing nonsense. But your God says it, according to your beliefs, in your Bible. And you don't have a problem with that because your bias tells you that the Bible is still okay. You have this split vision of the world. Unfortunately, that little split side only comes into, well, I should say fortunately, only comes into play for your religion, for your God, for your Bible. Now think about why you need to do that, and maybe you'll stop being a stupid fucking Christian. Later.